Next short lightning talk is going to be from Joshua Fox, who's a senior cloud architect over at Do It International. He advises tech startups and growth companies about the cloud, writes open source, publishes technical articles, speaks at conferences, all that really good stuff, right? And he's going to be talking about, traffic routing. In fact, level 7 egress control. Very, very cool stuff that is just now emerging in Kubernetes. So without further ado, take it away, Joshua.
I'm Joshua Fox. I'm a senior cloud architect at Do It International. And I'm delighted to be speaking to you today at DevOps Days Kiev on level 7 egress control in Kubernetes. The challenge is to fully lock up your application in a virtual private cloud and not allow any traffic inbound or outbound except where needed, for example, to a specific domain, api.cadf.io. Can you do this in the firewall or network access control list or in a security group by defining the IP address to which access is permitted? Well, no, you can't, because IP addresses can change at any time. They could change every few seconds, every 30 seconds. There's no guarantee. And so you need to find some way to capture the fact that the IP addresses can change. One domain could have many IP addresses. So you could set up a cloud function or a Lambda that checks every 5 seconds and updates the firewall or the NACL with the IP addresses that belong to the domain, allowing egress to it. I don't recommend doing it yourself. I recommend using a mature open source project like the Squid proxy, which has many capabilities, including allowing egress by domain name. It checks the IP addresses every few seconds, and it can also check the server name, the domain name to which an HTTPS request is sent, because a given IP address could have many domains behind it, and therefore the TCP packet can have an indication of the domain. AWS network firewalls can do this too, looking at the SNI to determine that egress is allowed to a domain and not to another one, even if they share an IP address. You could alternatively use the Route 53 DNS firewall on Amazon. That's not quite what you want, because it just says which IP addresses you can look up for a given domain, which domains allow that, and it doesn't say how egress is permitted or denied. Google has a new product, the Secure Web Proxy. You give it the certificate, and it looks inside the encrypted traffic, and it can do egress control by domain. Read the article by my colleague, Chimbu Chinadurai. Or you can use another new feature, FQDN firewall objects in Google. It does not use SNI, it does not look into the packets, but it is less expensive, and it does do this continual updating of IP addresses. What if you're working with Kubernetes and you want to specify that a certain namespace, like the API connector, can have egress to this domain, but not other namespaces? Those solutions do not recognize Kubernetes concepts. You might want to use labels to say that these pods are labeled as finance pods, and they should be allowed access to the finance API. So you need a Kubernetes-aware solution, and you can do that with Cilium. You cannot do that with ordinary network policies, because these only allow you to define an IP address, which, as I mentioned, is not good enough. However, Cilium is an added network layer, and Cilium network policies do recognize domain names. Sounds good. This is a robust and mature open source project, but the problem is that it's another network layer. So you have the hassle of managing and debugging a complete new layer on top of whatever you have now. You could use Istio, a service mesh with robust capabilities for security, monitoring, and routing, and it allows you to control access by domain. But again, it's another layer on top of what you already have, and it's not worth it just for this. Google, however, just released a new feature in which you can define domains for egress. This is in GKE. Again, see an article by my colleague, Chimbu Chinadurai, 3 separate articles that he wrote. And although Google has implemented this, it is not a standard. There is, however, a committee, and once they finish their work, every compliant Kubernetes cluster will support Egress Control by domain name and a network policy. If you'd like to see the full presentation, come see me in SRECon in Dublin in October. Email me, love to be in touch, and you can see the full slides at this address.